My name is Volodymyr Yakubov. I represent the British Standards Institution, and we support the British Embassy Baku here at this event, so nicely organized by the COP29 team at the Baku Climate Week. So I would like to welcome everyone to this high-level policy roundtable. This roundtable will focus on voluntary carbon markets in Azerbaijan. It will be an introduction to a very important topic, which is part of COP negotiations and is in the focus of COP29. So, first of all, thank you for the distinguished panel to be here. Yes, I would like to welcome Mrs. Nigar Arparadi, high-level climate change champion for COP29. I would like to welcome His Excellency Fergus Auld, British Ambassador to Azerbaijan. I would like to welcome Elnur Sultanov, CEO of COP29. And I would like to welcome Samira Musaeva, Deputy Head of State Tax Service. And I would like to welcome Hijran Husseinova, Member of the Parliament of Azerbaijan. With this introduction, I would like to move on to the objectives and to speaker introductions. The objective of our the objective of this high-level policy roundtable is to raise awareness of the Azerbaijani policymakers, private sector, and civil society on the voluntary carbon markets, and to hear the views of the representatives of the government of Azerbaijan, what policy direction Azerbaijan might take as a result of the forthcoming COP29, and how Azerbaijan can benefit from voluntary carbon markets in both environmental impact and economic impact and societal impact terms. So now I would like to invite to give welcome remarks Mrs. Nigar Arparadi, high-level climate champion for COP29. Ms. Arparadi, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. It's a great honor to be here and to represent COP29 presidency. It has been already day 4 of our Baku Climate Action Week. We have a couple of weeks to COP29 where the whole climate community will be coming together to discuss the global climate action. And I would like just to say that climate change is not a future risk. It's not a future threat. It's here, it's now, so we all need to address these issues. As COP29 presidency, our vision is done around 2 pillars. It's enhancing, increasing ambition and enhancing action. So first of all, when we speak about enabling, about ambition, we speak about 1.5 degrees that should be within reach, and the governments need to take commitments to make this happen. When we speak about action, we speak about finance, capacity building, technologies. This is exactly where we come from. So COP29 is a finance COP. We will be speaking about that, I think, today. Well, it's where we call it litmus test for Paris Agreement, and we we are expecting parties to come together and to agree on the next climate finance goal. My role is a role of a champion, and the champion's role is to become a bridge between the parties, between the work of the governments and non-state actors, the civil society, private sector, NGOs, philanthropic community, cities. So all these actors need to be heard, and their voices need to be heard at the COP29 and COP process. So as you know, trillions are needed for green transition. So how are we making sure that private sector is playing a role in it? That not only large companies but also SMEs are benefiting from this transition. So I will be happy to listen to this discussion around carbon mitigation and market mechanisms. And I would like to also take this chance to thank Embassy of UK for being with us and for sharing the stage on a number of discussions within this Baku Climate Action Week. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Arpadarai. And now I would like to invite to the floor to deliver some welcoming remarks His Excellency Fergus Holt, who is the British Ambassador to Azerbaijan. Thank you.
Thank you, Vladimir. Hanımlar ve janablar, hürmetli iştirakçılar, Elnur Mualim, Nigar Hanım, Hicran Hanım ve Samira Hanım, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here today to introduce discussion on the crucial topic of carbon markets during this inaugural Baku Climate Action Week. Thanks very much to ADA for hosting us. Can I start with a diplomatic secret? Sometimes ambassadors are asked to make speeches about things they don't know very much about. Shocking, isn't it? And I am no financial markets expert, so I'm glad that we have some real experts around me in the room. But I have been tracking carbon markets since I first worked on climate change at the UK Foreign Office 18 years ago. At that point, our focus in the British government was on the creation and implementation of the United Nations Clean Development Mechanism, or CDM, and the European Union's Emission Trading Scheme, or ETS, of which, of course, the UK was part. Both of those market mechanisms had their flaws and their inefficiencies. Markets do. But participants in well-managed markets also learn and help the market itself to develop. And in 2024, we now have decades of experience of learning about carbon markets. And market mechanisms are an essential part of ensuring that climate finance flows efficiently and at scale to the projects we need globally to tackle the climate crisis. In the British government, we believe that carbon markets can raise finance for developing countries and support sectors critical to keeping the world on a 1.5-degree pathway by tackling deforestation, for example. Carbon markets can incentivize technological innovation, attract investment, and fuel economic growth. They can create jobs and opportunities in renewable energy and environmental services, including nature-based solutions that also protect biodiversity. So the UK is acting to shape global carbon markets and ensure developing countries can access them through our participation in the UN climate negotiations and through targeted international climate finance programming. Putting a price on carbon is a fundamental element of tackling climate change. It provides a cost-effective way of reducing emissions and mobilizing the private sector. Evidence suggests that carbon markets could be worth several billion pounds annually by 2030 and potentially much more in the following decades. This is finance that is sorely needed given the scale of the challenge we face. One of my guests over dinner last night suggested that by 2030, the carbon market could be worth 100 billion and generate 17 million jobs, more than the global oil and gas industry put together. As the best statistic of the evening, I promised I would repeat it. Thank you to Lily. To be a real game changer, we need carbon pricing and higher integrity markets globally. That is why the UK is helping over 30 countries to price their emissions more ambitiously and to access carbon markets. As presidency of COP26 in Glasgow, the UK oversaw agreement of international carbon markets rules under Article 6 after years of disagreement. This was a key achievement of our presidency and a testament to the hard work of all parties. But at COP29, there are still some outstanding Article 6 topics remaining to be concluded, and I commend Azerbaijan as the incoming presidency for recognizing early that this was an area of the negotiations in which they could help us all take an important step forward. As the UK, we will seek an outcome informed by environmental and social integrity, which provides certainty to market participants. We are ready to work constructively with all parties to reach consensus in Baku. If we get these rules right, finance will be mobilized to high integrity mitigation activities, which could eclipse the hundreds of billions leveraged by the CDM. Under our COP26 presidency, we also supported the Voluntary Carbon Market Integrity Initiative and the Integrity Council for the Voluntary Carbon Market. These initiatives are developing clear guidelines for organizations to ensure that voluntary carbon markets deliver the greatest benefits for the climate, for people, and for nature, and that all credits issued globally meet a common threshold for integrity. I'm really pleased we are having this discussion in Baku today, with the pre-COP ministerial next week and COP29 itself next month. I hope this raises awareness and provokes some good questions about how Azerbaijan can harness the potential of carbon markets for its own net zero transition, as well as for its presidency. Thanks to my brilliant team at the British Embassy, especially Ulkar Safaralieva, our experts with BSI, our partners at Baku Climate Action Week, the COP29 team, and the British Chamber of Commerce in Azerbaijan for all their hard work in making this event possible. Uğurlar ve çok sağ olun.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for these insightful remarks. And now I would like to invite Mr. Elnur Sultanov, CEO of COP29, to share with us his point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Cənab səfir, siz Azərbaycan dilində danışaraq bizim üçün həm şərəf duyuruq, əlbəttə bizim dilimizə göstərdiyiniz hörmətə görə, eyni zamanda strukturu da dəyişdirirsiniz. Siz danışandan sonra mən də məcbur oluram, ən azından bir cümlə belə artıq olsun sizdən daha biraz da artıq danışmağa, amma doğrudan da mən hər zaman sizi X platformasında da, başqa məqamlarda da və sizin Azərbaycanda keçirdiyiniz bir həyat yolu var bilirəm və bu həyat yolunun bizim üçün, bizim millət üçün ən dəyərli varlığımız olan dillə ifadə edilməsi hər zaman bilin ki, sizə olan hörmətimizi dəfələrlə artırır. Excellency, Ambassador, dear friends, colleagues, Excellency, MP, dear Nigar Hanım, first of all, I want to really start with congratulating Nigar Hanım with very successful Climate Week. We ourselves, I think we were in Geneva when we discussed that actually Baku Climate Week will be pre-COP for business, pre-COP for non-governmental organizations. So in a sense, I think this is the first time we are getting a sense of what we are going to be having during COP29 in November. And really great job, thank you so much. Mr. Ambassador and organizers, really thank you so much for bringing up this very, very significant issue on carbon markets, on carbon pricing, because again, we have a lot of experts, a lot of clever people here, and I'm definitely very willing and looking forward to listen to them, but basically we are talking about externality. As long as carbon will stay as externality, however negative it is, and we don't internalize that externality, we are going to have a problem. And that putting a price on carbon, either in the form of taxes or emission tradings, each of them having their advantages, right? In the case of taxes, you are fixing the price, but you are not fixing the amount. In the case of emissions trading, you are fixing the amount, but then prices fluctuate. Both of them are very important. And we are talking about two kinds of markets, of course. Last time I checked voluntary carbon markets, we are talking about $2 billion currently in the world. But especially starting from perhaps 2021, 2022, we have had a lot of problems regarding especially the integrity that Mr. Ambassador was referring to. Right? Even reliable, the entities that were perceived as reliable, it became clear that we do have huge problems. And already different and complex issue got a big blow. But it doesn't mean that we are stopping, the world is moving forward. And I'm definitely amazed by how many clever and creative individuals are involved in this issue and what kind of brilliant ideas they are coming up with to solve this global crisis that we are all facing. And it's also amazing that compulsory compliance markets, carbon markets, are reaching around $1 trillion. European Union, of course, is leading the process. Almost 90% of the market is on their shoulders. But also the rest is somehow divided between China, United States, and your great country. And in fact, the United Kingdom was really very instrumental at COP28, COP26 in terms of starting the operationalization of Article 6. But all in all, I think one of the problems with carbon markets and carbon pricing is that it's counterintuitive, right? And I think there's, among many other things, there is a steep learning curve in terms of understanding and implementing what is happening. So therefore, educational activities, training activities like this, the one that we are having today, will be very, very crucial. Because whenever you talk to people, the amount of unknown and counterintuitive parts of it are so huge that the first movers really feel this concern in terms of going forward. But at the same time, biggest issue and probably the holy grail of carbon markets will be Article 6, because it's not enough to do these things domestically and internally, right? Although voluntary carbon markets go beyond borders, but we need to move forward and internationalize, right? So internationally transferable mitigation outcomes is the holy grail that we are facing today, which is embedded in Article 6. And it's very important to make improvements in that regard, because that's what Paris Agreement says, and that's what 195 countries and other entities signed up to, right? Because one of the problems regarding carbon markets and carbon pricing would be unilateral moves. And as a person who is studying and understanding climate issues and climate crisis, I really find it very hard not to support any movement that helps us in terms of mitigation and adaptation. But at the same time, some unilateral moves also could create some problems, because eventually and essentially we are moving between the frameworks of three agreements, right? You know, CCC, Kyoto Protocol, and Paris Agreement. And therefore, Article 6 is really important in terms of kind of internationalizing these compulsory markets and tying it back to NDCs and other climate action documents that we are talking about, so that we are really moving forward in a just manner. Because some unilateral actions, they could be helping in terms of mitigation in the short run, but they create certain questions from other countries, and it creates questions in terms of whether we are moving according to the letter and the spirit of the agreements, and especially, of course, Paris Agreement. And regarding Article 6, I think we have expressed it several times already. For us, Article 6 is, if it is second, it's only second to NCQG. It's the top issue for us. because it's about climate finance. As Mr. Ambassador indicated, it's about the most efficient way of reducing carbon emissions. We think that adaptation is important as mitigation, but at the end of the day, unless we start removing and reducing and avoiding the emissions of greenhouse gases, we are in deep trouble. And another great thing about Article 6, of course, is that the third great thing, right? There's efficiency, there is removal or reduction or avoidance. Although in Bonn, avoidance issue, especially regarding 6.8, got a slightly different interpretation. And that issue will be, again, we will come back to that issue one more time. But at the same time, perhaps as we get closer, and when we talk to different parties in terms of negotiation, we understand that we are really close. I mean, for Article 6 to be fully operationalized, it's a possibility. 6.2, 6.4, I'm really rooting for 6.4. 6.2 is probably easier, and hopefully, again, fingers crossed, we believe that there will be great outcomes during COP29. But 6.4 is there to solve a lot of problems and create a qualitative difference in terms of the fight to keep the world without getting out of control in terms of global warming and climate change. And one more time, we are counting on your creativity. I'm very happy that in Azerbaijan, we do have entities, I don't want to name names, that already traded and even earned some money in terms of carbon emissions or greenhouse gas emissions. So we do see that that issue is taking off. And I think Faik Mellim is here. Faik Mellim, yeah. We have been discussing with Faik Mellim in Azerbaijan briefly, and before I again really stop talking, I think there are two major issues that we are working on to facilitate this process within Azerbaijan. Although currently we are spending much more time regarding Article 6, right? We are building the regulatory and legislative basis for that, and we are building technical MRV infrastructure basis, because these two things are very, very crucial for this thing to gain the level of quality that we need to move forward. And we are very close. Legislative basis is almost done. I see the representatives of the Minister of Economy, who are very crucial actor in this process, very creative and very much contributing to the process. And MRV-wise also, although we have some system in place, as we discussed, Faik Mellim, it's one thing to talk about MRV in terms of NDC per se, but it's another thing to talk about MRV and this technological infrastructure in terms of carbon markets and carbon pricing. So with your support, this business community, creative individuals, I'm sure that we are going to be moving forward. And regarding, of course, Article 6, we need everybody's support, including Mr. Ambassador, your great country's support, who has been contributing to this process from the very start. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sultanov. And now I would like to invite Mrs. Samira Musaeva, Deputy Chief of State Tax Service, to deliver her welcome remarks. Mrs. Musaeva, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Yakubov, Mr. Ambassador, all the guests. I would also like to say that I'm very happy to be here. I'm honored to be here today to discuss one of the most important, maybe not one of the, but the most important issue, the climate change. And this event brings together a diverse group of individuals from different sectors. For example, me as a government representative, social society, parliament, all the experts from around the world, and I'm happy to be here. Azerbaijan, like many other nations, faces the growing threats posed by climate change, and while we're rich in natural resources, including oil and gas, we are equally aware of the urgent need to shift towards sustainable energy practices and green economic policies. And I'd like to share with you our efforts in this regard, focusing on mitigation and adaptation strategies, carbon pricing mechanisms, and our vision to the net zero. And as it was already mentioned, climate change is a multifaceted challenge, and which requires both immediate action and long-term planning as well. And in Azerbaijan, we have recognized that a dual approach is necessary, combining mitigation efforts with robust adaptation strategies. On one hand, mitigation focuses on reducing greenhouse gas emissions to limit the future severity of the climate change. And on the other hand, adaptation involves adjusting our economic and social systems to cope with the inevitable changes that are already upon us. From a mitigation perspective, Azerbaijan has committed to reducing emissions and transitioning towards a greener economy. And we're actively working to decrease the carbon intensity of our energy sector, which is traditionally reliant on the fossil fuels, and we're exploring ways to diversify into cleaner energy sources. Well, as I also represent State Tax Service as tax administration, we truly believe that modern tax framework is needed that balances all at the same time revenues, environmental protection, social considerations, aligning with decarbonization goals and international climate obligations. As we know, 2/3 of all submitted nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement consider the use of carbon pricing to achieve their emission reduction targets. And according to the World Bank, for emission reduction targets in indices, carbon pricing can reduce the cost of climate change for 32% until 2030. And as we move forward in our mitigation efforts, one of the most powerful tools is the disposal of carbon pricing. And carbon pricing has emerged as an effective green fiscal policy instrument, one that not only influences green growth, but also provides a critical mechanism for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. It can be implemented through explicit pricing and implicit pricing mechanisms. And as many developing countries, Azerbaijan already has a kind of implicit carbon pricing instruments, which are the fuel taxes, maybe mining taxes. But the effective pricing instruments are mainly explicit ones that are carbon taxes, emission trading systems. So we're currently working on redesigning our carbon pricing instruments from implicit to explicit pricing ones. And Azerbaijan is taking steps to implement and expand these carbon pricing mechanisms. We have begun working on our national climate strategy, and we're exploring carbon pricing tools both individually and in a hybrid form that combine carbon taxes, and maybe will combine ETS also. And as it was already mentioned by Mr. Sultanov, we also face different kind of administrative tools, for example, some kind of unilateral way of trying to combat these climate changes. One example is CBAM's carbon border adjustment mechanisms, which we understand the purpose of which is to mitigate the carbon emissions, but from the other side, we all understand that there are still a bunch of open questions, and especially from the administrative side, and we are still learning how it works. And talking about market mechanisms, I think will also give you a secret, as Mr. Ambassador, as we haven't yet implemented as a whole country internal carbon market, or do not have much experience on international carbon markets. But we are, of course, as a country and as a tax administration, learning different market mechanisms. And as we know, the first 3 market mechanisms were first mentioned in Kyoto Protocol, and Mr. Ambassador mentioned about CDM that UK implemented for years. And of course, Paris Agreement and Article 6 is also the topic that we're now learning, especially while designing our carbon pricing policy. We're also looking to different design ways where the carbon credits can be offsetted while pricing the emissions from the sectors. I don't want just to take more time about talking macroeconomic effects of all these emissions or the carbon pricing instruments, but I would also like to give a very brief information that as State Tax Service, we recently hosted with Inter-European Organization of Tax Administrations International Carbon Pricing Forum in Baku on September 25 and 26, and this also gave us quite a large scale of information, understanding, expertise about carbon pricing, and we're happy that over 40 high-ranking officials from IOTA member countries, as well as from international organizations like World Bank, ADB, OECD, IMF, and very much other business representatives had very fruitful discussions, and all experts and specialists from across the globe exchanged their best practices, and also experts explored the challenges of implementation of pricing tools, especially after CBAM regulations. We believe that the findings from that forum also and findings from this forum will serve as a foundation of this roundtable, will serve as a foundation for further discussions for COP29, ensuring that Azerbaijan continues to play a central role in the global effort to combat the climate change. While adoption of carbon pricing and other mitigation tools it's essential, we also we are also keenly aware of the challenges that lie ahead, and especially about different segments of the society, vulnerable communities, not only about the large corporations, but also how it will affect the small and medium businesses, and no one should be left behind as we move forward to more sustainable future. So in conclusion, I would like again to thank you very much for organizing such roundtable, and I'm very excited and very happy to be here to listen all the discussions and wish the good luck to all of the participants. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Mrs. Musaeva, for the view from the State Tax Service, and I would like to pass the floor now to Ms. Hijran Husseinova, who is an Azerbaijani MP, member of the Parliament of Azerbaijan. So the floor is yours, madam. Thank you.
Thank you. Çox sağ olun, hörmətli sədrət. Mən belə başa düşdüm ki, axırıncı çıxış mənimdir burada və vaxt da çox azdır. Ona görə ki, limiti keçmişik. Ona görə çalışaram biraz qısa danışım. Amma ilk öncə mən sizə minnətdarımı bildirirəm ki, bu dəyərli masaya məni dəvət eləmişsiniz. Ona görə ki, doğrudan da bu çox vacib bir məsələdir. Biz insanlar təbiətə təsirimizin ən yüksək səviyyədə olduğu bir dövrdə yaşayırıq. Və əgər gələcək nəsillərin yaşaya biləcəyi bir dünyanı qorumaq istəyiriksə, bu təsirlərdən xəbərdar olmalıyıq və onları azaltmağa çalışmalıyıq. Və burada çıxış eləyənlərin də mən belə fikirlərini belə bütövlükdə görsək, görürük ki, əsas məqsəd ondadır ki, biz artıq belə bir dövrə gəlmişik ki, bir ekoloji mədəniyyət formalaşmalıdır insanların arasında və buna çox böyük diqqətlə yanaşmaq lazımdır. Ona görə ki, biz hamımız rastlaşırıq ki, qlobal istiləşmənin qarşısını almaq, iqlim dəyişikliklərinin təsirlərini minimuma endirmək və su ehtiyatlarımızdan səmərəli istifadə etmək üçün çox mühüm addımlar atılmalıdır. Lakin biz hazırki vəziyyəti dəqiq anlamalıyıq. Yaranmış problemləri müəyyən etməliyik. Ölçməyimizin bir səyi idarə etmək çox çətindir. Bu səbəbdən fəaliyyətimizin yer və atmosferimizə təsirini də ölçməliyik. Ötən əsrdə dünyada temperatur Selsiya üzrə 1 dərəcədə yüksəlib. İlk eşitdiyiniz zaman çox səslənməyə bilər, ancaq bu istiləşmənin böyük hissəsinin son 30 ildə baş verməsi prosesin nə qədər sürətlə getdiyini göstəricisidir. və atmosferə buraxıldığımız qazlar hesabına istixana effekti artır. Qlobal istiləşmə olaraq təyin etdiyimiz bu vəziyyətinin təsiri önümüzdəki illərdə daha da artacaq. Lazımı ehtiyat tədbirləri görülməsə, cari əsrin sonuna qədər temperatur artımının müsbət 3 dərəcəyə çatacağı gözlənilir. Və bu ekstremal hava hadisələri, daşqınlar, meşələrin qırılması, əkinçilik sahələrin və biomüxtəlifliyinin azalması, iqlim miqrasiyası kimi bir çox problemə gətirib çıxaracaq. Və əfsuslar olsun ki, artıq bu təsirləri də biz bugün hiss edirik. Və burada səslənən bu məsələlər karbon izi hazırda bəşəriyyətin ümumi ekoloji izlərinin 60%-ni təşkil edir və onun ən sürətlə böyüyən komponentidir. Karbonun azaldılması planetimizin imkanları daxilində yaşamaq üçün ən mühüm addımlar kimi qiymətləndirilir. Və karbon izini biz belə baxsaq, planetdəki hərəkətimizin daimi izi kimidir və biz bəlkə də bunu ilk anda hiss etmirik, lakin etdiyimiz hər seçim bizim yer üzündə və atmosferimizdə belə bir iz buraxır. Ancaq qlobal istiləşmə bununla bağlı bir şey etmək istərsə, hətta sadə dəyişikliklər də böyük təsir göstərə bilər. Məsələn, qidalanma zaman yerli və mövsumi məhsullardan istifadə etməliyik. Yenidən istifadə edilən alış-veriş çantalar seçməliyik. Plastik butulkadan su almaq əvəzinə su şüşəsi ala bilərik. Və mən bir çox misal göstərə bilərəm. İnsanlar kimi təşkilatların da karbon izlərini azaltmaq üçün ata biləcək bir çox mühüm və təsirli addımlar ola bilər. Əhəmiyyətli də dəyişikliklər tələb edən bu addımlardan biri də bərpa olunan enerji investisiya etməkdir. Burada səsləndi. Bunun haqqında bu çox vacib məsələdir. Və karbon izini azaltmaqın ən sürətli və sadə yollarından biri yaşıl və ya bərpa olunan enerji tarifinə keçmək və ya da ona sərmayə qoymaqdır. Və Azərbaycan bu sahədə də öz töhfələrini verir. Mən bir daha belə vacib dərin masanın keçirməsini təşkil edən bütün deməlilərə özlərini bildirirəm və inanıram ki, doğrudan da biz bu istiqamətdə hansısa bir işlər görə biləcəyik. Sağ olun.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Husseinova, for your very insightful remarks concluding this part of our roundtable. And I think the floor is set, and let's move to the next part of today's roundtable. So we have 3 speakers who will each share with us their views on the carbon markets, but from 3 different perspectives. George von Walderburg from ICE Futures Europe Intercontinental Exchange will talk about how the carbon markets work, will enlighten us whether they are effective or not in terms of climate policy instrument. Then the second presenter, Lily Ginsberg-Kieg from B0 Carbon, will take a look at the role of national policy in driving scale and responsible growth in carbon markets, and that would be done from the UK point of view, and that second panel will be concluded by Ahmed Rushdi, who is Associate Consultant at the British Standards Institution, with his reflections on voluntary carbon markets considerations from emerging markets perspective, and in particular Egyptian experience. As we all know, Egypt hosted COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh 2 years ago. It will be very interesting to hear what happened then and how the country moved forward over the last 2 years in terms of the creation and operation of voluntary carbon markets. So I would like now to invite George von Walderburg from IEC Futures Europe Intercontinental Exchange to make his presentation. And yeah, George, the floor is yours.
بو مشروع جروبا تقديم اتماك شرف دير وخان مستعية تشكر ديرم. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, I will now have to switch to English as my colleague Gary doesn't speak Azeri. So some of you who work in the energy sector will be familiar with ICE. For those who are not, please let me introduce our company. ICE is a global exchange operator. We own the benchmark oil, nat gas, LNG, coal, and carbon contracts. And all of these are, of course, required as price signals to enable the energy transition. Some of you might know us better as the owner of the New York Stock Exchange, which we bought in 2012. ICE acquired its carbon business and me through the purchase of the Climate Exchange Group. That was the world's first operator of carbon exchanges. We established the Chicago Climate Exchange in 2003. That company was founded by Dr. Richard Sandor, who was the pioneer of climate markets. He invented cap and trade, and in the 1990s in America, this was used to reduce the sulfur emissions in the United States, and very successfully, it solved the acid rain problem. And so the UN then spoke to Dr. Richard, and we then established a cap and trade scheme to reduce carbon emissions. At ICE, we trade approximately 60 million tons of carbon a day. On an annualized basis, that's equal to slightly over 50% of the planet's greenhouse gas emissions. Companies manage their compliance risk and their price risk on ICE. We have open positions equating to $75 billion, and that translates into over $1 trillion notional of environmental contracts traded. That's the third year in a row that we've achieved that. Besides carbon, we also operate the largest markets in renewable energy certificates and renewable fuels. So we like to think that when we talk about climate markets, it's worthwhile taking a step back. And whether we talk about net zero, energy transition, ESG, or sustainability, let's sometimes have a look at why we have these markets and what they're looking to achieve. So bringing it back to first principles, which is the science. So the net zero mitigation pathway is, of course, required to address climate risk, and this pathway now seems to land on a temperature limit of maximum 1.5 degrees increase. We cannot emit more than 420 gigatons of CO2 to stay within this. And so therefore, ladies and gentlemen, the atmosphere is the ultimate scarce resource which needs to be priced if we are to conserve it. The carbon budget is determined by the carbon cycle. Climate change is an imbalance in the carbon cycle, humans emitting more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere that can be absorbed by the Earth's ecosystems. Human emissions into the atmosphere are equated to the burning of fossil fuels, and trees and oceans absorb CO2 or carbon out of the atmosphere. We currently have a surplus of 18 billion tons of carbon emissions per year. By understanding how carbon moves through the carbon cycle, investors can target how they can invest in a greener planet, for example, through permits to pollute and credits to pay for reductions or removals, and renewable energy certificates for building out green energy infrastructure. Human activity emits 40 billion tons of carbon dioxide per year. but 82% of these are not priced, i.e. they are not at risk or a liability to a company. To reach net zero requires an energy transition away from fossil fuels, as well as the preservation of natural capital. Environmental markets allow capital to be reallocated so that environmental goals can be met. To reach net zero, we have to reduce emissions to the point where no further reductions can be made, and then compensate for the residual pollution with removals. At the same time, we must invest in alternative clean fuel sources to compensate for the fossil fuels. So how do they work? There are multiple energy transitions depending on the cost of abatement, but the principle remains the same: to use economics to solve for climate risk, by adding the cost of carbon to the price of fossil fuels to displace more pollutant fuels by moving these down the merit order, while lowering the green premium for clean ones. Some transition fuels, such as natural gas, as the Azeri government recognizes, are transition fuels, and some of these will not be readily replaceable. For example, oil in the transportation sector. But these can be offset until they are. Of course, not all future fuel developments are foreseeable. So on the right-hand side, this is just an example of where we will hope to get to. Now the question is, does this work? So we've got a few very good examples for you. The EU has had a very successful scheme. It was established, as you might be familiar with, in 2005. And between 2005 and 2021, the EU managed to reduce its carbon emissions by 35%. The California scheme, WCI, commenced in 2013 and achieved its 2020 decarbonization goals already in 2016. However, we've had a number of crises, mainly financial crises, since then, and these, of course, also reduce economic output. So therefore, for the clearest example of how effective carbonomics can be, let us look at the UK example. On this slide, you will see UK power generation, and that has been based historically on two primary fuel sources, coal and natural gas. The black line denotes the clean dark spread, that is, the profitability of buying coal and selling power. The spark spread is for buying gas for generating power. When we add carbon to the formula, we get the clean dark spread and the clean spark spread, respectively. The UK carbon price is shown in grey in the background. It was too low to create any fuel switching from coal to gas, so the UK government introduced the carbon support price, raising it to an additional £18 tax on top of the carbon price. Very quickly, the CDS, so the clean dark spread, became unprofitable. Operators were losing £28 per megawatt hour, while gas operators were making £24 per megawatt hour. On the following slide, you can see how effective this has been. And you can see how effectively coal has been priced out of the UK fuel mix. Prior to the CPS introduction, coal accounted for 40% of primary fuel, and at the end of the period shown, only 2%. I'm sure many of you will have heard the announcement by the UK government on Monday that the UK has just closed its last coal-fired station. I'd like to congratulate the UK government at this point on their policy. So let's have a quick look at the environmental markets today. The most significant number on this slide is 18, which means that only 18% of the percentage of global emissions are directly priced, and only 5% of these are priced at a level recommended to achieve decarbonization by the World Bank. Of these so-called tons at risk, 9 billion tons are issued, skewed mainly by China, so that trading volumes are double that. However, if we take just the 4 largest markets by volume, so the EU, California, UK, and REGI schemes, then we can see that the volume traded is a factor or a churn rate of 8. And this high level of liquidity is what companies need to manage their risk at the lowest possible cost. These 4 benchmarks are traded on ice. In my final slide, I'd like to make some comments on the voluntary carbon markets before I hand over to Lily. As we know, the voluntary carbon markets are essential to finance carbon removals, without which we won't achieve net zero. However, less than 5% of all carbon transactions are carbon credits. The rest are allowances, of which 90% are traded on ICE. However, ICE used to operate the world's largest carbon credit market based on CERs issued by the CDM, which His Excellency has already alluded to earlier on, so credits issued by the Clean Development Mechanism. We traded 8 billion of these, but what happened? CERs are not recognized as being Paris Agreement compatible, but the market's demise occurred in 2012 when the EU restricted their use within the EU ETS to those from least developed countries. Before that, EU operators could surrender approximately 10% of their annual compliance volume by financing removals or reductions in third countries. After 2012, the value of these CERs fell from $13 to under 50 cents. Ladies and gentlemen, you can't have a market without buyers, so demand needs to be stimulated by integration into mandated programs. The initiatives by the UK government to investigate this possibility for the UK are therefore very important, and hopefully the EU will follow suit as is mooted. High quality standards of credits are vital to re-establishing market confidence. An example of both a mandated market and a high quality standard are CORSIA contracts on ICE for airlines. These are the market's first Paris Agreement aligned contracts. It speaks to their integrity that whilst nature-based credits are trading currently below $1, the CP1 contracts are trading above $15. And lastly, I'd like to make a comment on the importance of offsetting and how this is accounted for. The purchase of carbon credits assets have to equate to a financial liability, not a physical one. The polluter does not become carbon neutral. They still emit it. But they incur the economic pain of polluting and are therefore incentivized to find lower cost abatement opportunities. If companies do that without claiming to be physically offsetting, they will support the integrity of the market, which is so important to all of us. Tishakari Dharam.
Many thanks, George, for your very interesting and detailed presentation, and I hope that sort of gives a very good foundation for sort of a technical view of what voluntary carbon markets are and how they operate. And now I would like to invite Lily Ginsberg-Keek from Big Zero Carbon to take us through the role of national policy in driving scale and responsible growth in carbon markets. I would like to say that Lily worked for the UK government, and she was advisor to the Minister of Environment in DEFRA. And then she transitioned to the private sector. So, Lily, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for having me here today. Today, I'm going to be talking about the role of national policy in driving scale and responsible growth in carbon markets, and focusing specifically on what's been happening in the UK. Firstly, I just want to quickly introduce myself. I'm the policy manager at B Zero Carbon, and as Volodymyr outlined before, I previously worked for the UK government advising the Environment Minister, and I've also had experience consulting local and national governments on their climate mitigation and adaptation plans. At B Zero Carbon, I focus specifically on advocating to governments on key policy changes needed in voluntary carbon markets, compliance markets, and Article 6 carbon markets. I just want to go into a bit about what exactly B Zero Carbon is. So B Zero Carbon is a carbon ratings agency, and essentially that means we assess how well a carbon project is doing. So a B Zero Carbon rating is our assessment on the likelihood of a carbon credit achieving a ton of CO2e avoided and or removed. This is incredibly important because there's a huge variation in quality across carbon projects, as we've seen, and this is also similar to the role that credit ratings play in financial markets. So what exactly is a carbon credit? I think it's quite important to go back to the basics to understand what exactly this means. So carbon credits arrives from projects delivering climate benefits through the reduction or removal of greenhouse gas emissions. Each credit represents a promise to avoid or remove 1 tonne of carbon dioxide equivalent. And I want to bring everyone's attention to the word here, promise, because it's not with a certainty that you can say that 1 carbon credit is exactly equivalent to 1 tonne of CO2e avoided and or removed, which is why a risk-based approach in carbon markets is so necessary. I think it's important to point out, even though we've had the integrity and quality concerns in carbon markets, they are still one of the most effective tools to deliver climate action today. What are the types of carbon credit markets? So before going into detail of what exactly the UK is doing, I think it's quite important to set out the different types of carbon credit markets we see today. Voluntary carbon markets are traditionally seen as unregulated carbon markets, which are driven by the private sector voluntarily choosing to buy carbon credits in order to meet their net zero targets and strategies. Traditionally, they have been unregulated, but increasingly we are seeing regulation come into play in order to mitigate against the quality and integrity concerns we've seen in the market to date. Compliance markets are traditionally regulated markets. They form the basis of emissions trading schemes or carbon taxes. But what's important about compliance markets today is increasingly we're seeing the inclusion of carbon credits within these systems. A key example of this is the Singapore carbon tax, where 5% of a company's obligation can be covered by high-quality carbon credits. And the Singapore government has set out eligibility criteria for what a high-quality carbon credit is. Lastly, Article 6 carbon markets. We have 2 main market-based approaches within Article 6. We have Article 6.2, which sets out bilateral trading between countries of internationally transferred mitigation outcomes, otherwise known as ITMOs. We then have Article 6.4, which is a UN mechanism for the trading of Article 6.4 emissions reduction units. As we've heard today, these are still undergoing negotiations, and hopefully we will see agreement made at COP29. But I think it's important to point out that Article 6.2 is already undergoing operationalization across the world. And we've seen over 80 agreements between countries made today, with the first issuance of an ITMO between Switzerland and Thailand at the end of last year. So how exactly is the UK government engaging in carbon credit markets? Today I want to focus specifically on 4 main ways. Firstly, they're ensuring that the voluntary carbon market is used responsibly as a means of supporting corporate decarbonisation. Secondly, they're investing in and building the carbon removals industry. They are positioning the UK as a global hub for carbon markets trading, and they're supporting the implementation of a robust Article 6 market. So how exactly is the UK government ensuring that the voluntary carbon market is used responsibly? This is through 3 main ways that I'm going to mention today. Firstly, they're supporting initiatives that raise the bar on quality. For example, the Integrity Council for the Voluntary Carbon Market, known as the ICVCM, was originally funded by the UK government. And the ICVCM is set up to create a new quality threshold for accreditation bodies and methodologies. Secondly, the UK government is supporting corporate credibility by supporting tools and frameworks to make credible claims and build robust net zero portfolios. An example of this is the Voluntary Carbon Markets Integrity Initiative, otherwise known as the VCMI. Again, the UK government chose to fund the early stages of this initiative in order to provide corporates with the guidance to actually know how can we make credible claims. Lastly, we have the regulation that the UK government is actually putting in place. So the Advertising Standards Agency in the UK has already put in place guidance for environmental claims. Within this guidance, it is required for a company to actually disclose the use of carbon credits within their claim. And this is a really important step to increasing transparency. Secondly, they're also currently thinking about climate-related disclosure rules. And within that, they're aligning to the International Sustainability Standards Body, which also sets out the need to disclose the use and the type of carbon credits that you're using. These are really important steps in building transparency within the market. So next, I'm going to talk a bit about what they've done exactly on building the carbon removal industry. In 2021, the UK set out their next net zero strategy, and within this, they had the target of meeting 5 million tonnes of CO2e removed using engineered carbon removal projects by 2030. They also set aside £100 million to invest in innovation and research for the engineered carbon removal sector. In addition to that, there's also 3 main ways that they've been supporting the private sector to actually build up this nascent area. Firstly, they've implemented greenhouse gas removal business models, which use contracts for difference to help subsidise costs and provide guaranteed revenue when these projects go to market. They're also building carbon capture utilisation clusters, which actually set up the carbon storage infrastructure across the UK to help build up the sector. And lastly, the UK just finished on consulting on the potential integration of greenhouse gas removals into the UK emissions trading scheme. This is extremely important as it provides a future source of demand for the engineered carbon removal sector within the UK. Next, the UK is becoming a global hub for carbon trading. Just as we know London has been a financial markets hub, we're also seeing it slowly become a carbon markets hub with a lot of private sector innovation occurring. For example, we're seeing the development of risk-based tools such as carbon ratings and insurance, and we're also seeing financial infrastructure turn their attention to the carbon markets as well, such as what my former speaker George was talking about with ICE, but as well as the London Stock Exchange. We're also seeing across the UK the development of new methodologies and standards. A key one to mention is the ISSO with support of BSI in creating the Net Zero Standard Framework and Guidance, as well as the Woodland Carbon Code and the Peatland Code, which were developed with support from the UK government to provide domestic carbon methodologies and crediting programs. Lastly, we're seeing private sector innovation within this area as well, with the creation of new registries and protocols for the use of carbon removals. So a key example of this is Isometric, which is trying to develop new methodologies and protocols for how you can have more robust and transparent processes for developing carbon removal projects. Lastly, I just want to focus a bit on what the UK is doing on Article 6. The government has been taking a very active role in ongoing Article 6 negotiations, and this started with the release of the Article 6 rulebook, which was spearheaded by the UK government during COP26, to their constructive role in negotiations to today. They are also a member of the Transformative Carbon Asset Facility, which helps countries to develop Article 6 frameworks and strategies. The UK has taken very much a leadership role within Article 6, trying to ensure that the market is grown with integrity and that we see it starting as soon as possible. So what's next for the UK government? Last week at New York Climate Week, we heard the Minister for Climate, Kerry McCarthy, state, "Carbon and nature markets hold the potential to play an essential role in achieving our environmental and climate targets faster, raising climate finance and supporting enhanced ambition. The UK will soon consult on steps we could take to raise integrity in these markets so they realise more of their potential." This was the announcement of the UK's intention to publicly consult on carbon and nature markets and how to continue to develop and scale them, which is a really important step to actually ask private sector and other organisations on their viewpoints of what are the lessons learned from the voluntary carbon market and what do we do to actually mitigate the issues that we've seen to grow it and scale it responsibly. I just want to say thank you for listening to me today and hearing a bit about the UK government approach and the role of national policy in growing carbon markets.
Thank you very much, Lily, for sharing the policy view and the UK experience and UK view of on the policy side of the voluntary carbon markets. Thanks again. And I would like to invite Ahmed Rushdie to share with us his reflections on voluntary carbon markets from emerging markets perspective. Ahmed.
Okay.
Please.
Thank you, Vladimir. Thank you for having me here. Actually, it is a great opportunity to be here in Baku, Climate Action Week, preparing for the COP29, where policies, ambitious promises, action and implementation also are being made there. Okay. So some reflection from the emerging markets on the voluntary carbon market. The voluntary carbon market could play an innovative, sustainable finance market and a crucial and instrumental role in bridging the climate action finance gap, whereby it's estimated by the UNFCCC to be like 4.3 trillion in an annual basis for till 2030. But why actually the voluntary carbon market cannot play this role currently? Due to some issues or some concerns from the point of view of integrity. And when it comes to integrity, we believe there is a need to differentiate between environmental integrity and financial integrity too. So from the Egyptian experience, we started actually after the COP27. During the COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, we announced the launch of the Egyptian voluntary carbon market to be a hub for the African carbon traded, voluntary carbon traded in the region. Okay, so we started by first tackling the issue of what actually are the complexity of the voluntary carbon market. And by definition, we found two main important issues. First, the definition of the voluntary carbon market is it is unregulated market and fragmented market, whereby we have two major issues. It is the regularity gap and the market fragmentation. Both this issue results in environmental challenges and some market-based challenges too. For example, one of the main environmental challenges could be the lack of transparency, the absence of additionality, the double counting issue, the leakage and the lack of permanence in the underlying projects done to reduce or remove the carbon emission. Whereby for the market-based challenges, we found that the very high fixed cost of implementing the projects and getting projects audited by verifier and validator, okay, represent a huge and tremendous actually cost on the developing of such a project in emerging markets. Absence of the trading platform results in limited liquidity and also high transaction cost. So what actually we have done through our journey in building regulated voluntary carbon market. And when we say regulated voluntary carbon market, yes, it's regulated, but it's like a hybrid model of carbon markets. It's not regulated as compliance market, and it's not as defined currently as a VCM, unregulated and fragmented market. To start our journey in building the regulatory framework, firstly, we got to know exactly how the market works. And let me take you just in 3 minutes into how the market works. The market works as any market by having supply side, demand side, and the intermediation or the trading platform. In case of the voluntary carbon market, as you can see, the supply side represents 8 steps out of the total 10 steps for the whole market, whereby the supply started by implementing some consultation, some investment in what we called the BDD or project design document developed by project developer who know the experience, he has already experience or the experience of building such a document to exactly explain how the project will work, what exactly the standards to be used, okay? In addition to the expected number of carbon credit to be issued, because in the ecosystem of voluntary carbon market, the one credit represents real one. CO2 equivalent ton that have been reduced, removed, or avoided from our atmosphere. So the document developed by the BDD in first and second steps represent a very important document in order to make sure that what has been written is validated by the third steps with the validator and verifier, the VVBs, okay? And it will result in real reduction of the carbon emission. Then the validator will go through reviewing and confirming the document of the BDD. After that, the registration into the voluntary carbon registry will come. And here, the voluntary carbon registry, we at the Financial Regulatory Authority in Egypt, okay, as a capital market regulator, define the registries as a depository system, exactly as capital markets and our friends from Baku Stock Exchange know how exactly the capital market works. The depository system is a system whereby all the documents related to the issuance of the carbon credit started by the BDD, then the validation report, the MRV reports, the verification report, the number of carbon credits are there. So we have to make sure that building the carbon registries, okay, have some good governance in terms of IT risk governance, in terms of cybersecurity, in terms of having the proper connectivity, and being sure that there is no human interaction or human manipulation for this carbon registry. Okay? Then, after making sure that the document is validated, the project is registered, we go into the implementation and the MRV process, whereby it will take like an average from 1.5 to 2 years, we need the MRV process, okay? After that, and finally, we have the verifier to make sure that what have mentioned in the validation report and in the BDD document have been already realized. The number of carbon credits have been issued and will be issued actually according to the number of CO2 equivalents that have been reduced or removed. After that, with the issuance, we came to face a very challenge whereby we don't have actually a trading platform for the carbon credits itself. We are not talking about trading contracts on the carbon credits. We are talking about trading on the spot credit itself, okay? Whereby we need to know how exactly these carbon credits will be traded, okay? So when we started our journey, we first started by defining the carbon credits. After COP27, I do remember, it's just like 2 weeks after COP27, I've been there amending the capital market executive regulation to identify and define the carbon credit as a financial instrument. And by the way, we have just 2 definitions for the carbon credits. The USA definition, which considers the carbon credits as a commodity, whereby other and EU model use carbon credit as a financial instrument. And this is actually what Egypt used, okay? So this was our baby step. After COP27, 2 weeks exactly, we started by definition. Also, we established a high-level committee. This is to make sure that it's not only the capital market regulators. We have the Ministry of Environment, we have some experts from the private sector engaged with us. The committee is responsible for all the steps that already have been taken. For example, okay, the committee have been there when we established our decree to identify the requirements for local and domestic validator and verifier bodies, the VVBs. Okay? We found that one of the main high fixed costs in our country, and I do believe it is the same for emerging countries, is the absence of local or domestic validator and verifier. The absence of MRV systems Okay, so we started tackling this issue and get to know what exactly is required to be a proper VV body according to best practices. We found that it is just like the ISO 14065, 14064-3, 17029, and all other related ISOs. We went directly to Ministry of Industry and EJAC, which is the Egyptian Accreditation Council, okay, responsible for accrediting companies for different ISOs, and asked them, do you guys accredit for the VVB's ISO? They said, no, we don't yet. But actually, thank God, they started with us the journey. And by the way, it was the first week of January 2023, just like less than 1 month after COP27, okay? And by 13th of May, last May, the Egyptian Accreditation Council got the International Accreditation Forum approval, the European Accreditation approval for providing the VVB ISOs. It is actually got recognized as one of the international accreditation bodies in the VVB ISOs that is essential for the validation and verification bodies to be start work. So we started by setting some requirements from the international VVB and from the national VVB. And we issued our regulation, and thank God, the impact of this regulation is that we have currently 3 VVBs listed in our FRA VVB list, whereby 2 of them are Egyptian, are local, and 1 are international. And by the way, we have in the pipeline 4 VVBs, 2 of them are international, and another 2 are being local VVBs. This is what actually we have been missing, that in the ecosystem of the voluntary carbon market, there is no regulator, especially capital market or environmental regulator, have just like a consolidated place whereby I can go and say, yes, I will take this project developer, I will choose this VVB, because this VVB, I'm quite sure, is currently working under the best practice, the different ISOs requirement for the validation and verification bodies. Okay? The next step actually was issuing the requirements for having the local and domestic registries. We all know that already we have some internationally well-recognized carbon registries like Vera, Gold Standard, Carbon Registry, the Carbon Registry Reserve, the American Carbon Registry. So what if we got like an intention, and it was actually true, that one of the domestic and the Egyptian companies established its own carbon registry according to international standards and methodologies approved by UNFCCC and other international recognized methodology setter and standard setter. So we decided to sit back and, okay, we will actually have to set some recommendation, or it's requirements, not recommendation, okay, for approving you, okay, and approving carbon credits issued in your carbon registry, like Vera or Gold Standard, to be traded in our trading system. We found that there is a need for well-structured governance for the standard setter. There is a need for IT infrastructure. There is a need for IT risk management, IT cybersecurity committee. All these committees have been actually written as one of our requirements for the approving of the local or domestic voluntary carbon registries. All this consultation for creating regulation for the voluntary carbon registry have been done in collaboration with the World Bank and comments from the World Bank experts. Because we don't like to have any trading system, actually it's not trading, any depository system which is the voluntary carbon registry now, can be manipulated by any human, okay? And by the way, the final step for approving the voluntary carbon registry is having an IT team from our financial regulatory authority that goes and inspect the systems, the database of this local carbon registry. And we believe this is one of the main and the crucial steps in building trust in this market. So after that, we established our regulation for listing and delisting. Okay? Okay. 2 minutes exactly. 2 minutes for the, and I'll 2 minutes exactly. Listing and delisting of the carbon credits, okay, whereby we listed the project itself in the database that in the FRA, Financial Regulatory Authority, and this database is being shared with the Ministry of Environment, okay? This is why the stakeholders should be there. And after the listing, we go into some rules for trading and for settlement, and whereby we allowed for the OTC trading be arranged, and the auction, both auction, the English and Dutch auction, and finally continuous trading if we have the sufficient and enough supply of the carbon credits. And last August, we announced the first transactions. We have actually three transactions made last August. 2 of them was by international seller, okay, and 1 by the local and domestic seller. Finally, if I have just 1 minute, I'll have 5 learned lessons that should be taken into consideration when we start building the voluntary carbon market. First, the need for clear regulatory framework, stakeholder engagement in early stages, by the way, from environmental regulator and the capital market regulator. Awareness, capacity building for market participants, and finally, having a pipeline of projects to create a sufficient supply to be there once we have the trading platform. Thank you. Sorry for being here.
Thank you very much, Ahmed, for this very detailed overview of the recent journey that Egypt has been on since the conclusion of COP27. And now we have concluded this second panel. So we had a look at the largest carbon trading platform that George von Walderbroek enlightened us on. Then Lily showed us the example of the UK experience in the role of national policy, and so where we are now with regulation and policy, and concluded with this insightful example from Egypt. So we are moving to the third part of our roundtable, which are reflections from the audience. So now I'm afraid I have to ask the speakers to accelerate and turbocharge, which I hope will be also the 2 key words for COP29 in terms of what we need to do for the sake of the climate. So the first speaker from the audience whom I would like to take the floor, but please, maximum 5 minutes, if possible even less, Orhan Mustafayev, Senior Advisor to High Level Champion for COP29. Orhan, please.
Thank you. So I'll be even shorter than 5 minutes. So first of all, again, thank you all both state authorities and local and international businesses to respond and to come in such a short notice to Azerbaijan to make this happen. Thank you all. So I hear this is our last roundtable. That's why I promised to our high-level champion that this is using the financial terms. This is kind of a last line of defense between us and freedom. So in 1 hour probably. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Nigar Arpadai, our high-level champion, announced is the climate-proof SMEs campaign. And since SMEs are disproportionately vulnerable for climate-related risks and shocks, we know that 66% of SMEs in emerging markets were affected by the climate change. So that's why Nigar has announced, so she's addressing this issue, and she's getting major momentum and support from abroad, from major stakeholders, and she concentrates on 3 key areas, and one of them is capacity building. Second is unlocking climate finance to SMEs, and the third one would be leveraging the potential and power of multinational and larger corporations to support SMEs in value chains. So my question is, would be, so I think one of the largest challenges we face in ensuring actually SMEs are not excluded from the carbon markets of the high barriers of entry. So we need also to think how we can make the carbon markets inclusive to SMEs and not just a playground for larger major corporations. So that's it from my side. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, that was very to the point and very fast. Yeah, so thank you very much, Mr. Mustafayev. The second reflection from the audience will be from Mr. Dovlatov, Deputy CEO, Azar Connect Group. So, Mr. Dovlatov, please join this distinguished panel with your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yakubov, Mr. Ambassador, dear guests, colleagues, and partners. It's a great honor to be here today. Unfortunately, I have very short time, so I want to share a couple of achievements our company, our group proud of. Also, I would like to give a very brief description about our introduction of our company. So Azar Connect Group is the country's largest ICT company operating in the dynamically developing ICT and high technologies field, and promoting innovations and improving the quality of life through advanced technologies. We have more than 2,500 professionals and provide advanced solutions in mobile communications, fixed and broadband internet, and as well as digital services in fintech, edtech, and media and TV. Our achievements in the first, we all know that technology companies are the biggest consumers of electricity in the economy, and our achievement in this field is during the last couple of years we achieved to decrease our electricity consumption by 60%, or approximately 53,000 megawatts annually, by analyzing energy usage, optimizing processes, and implementing advanced technologies that enhance energy efficiency. On the other hand, a part of our business operations, we embraced flexibility in our work culture by introducing remote working options for our staff, which also has a shift, not only improved employee well-being and productivity, but also contributed positively to our carbon mitigation efforts. By reducing the need for commuting and significantly lowering office-related energy consumption, we've seen a tangible reduction in our environmental impact. This decision aligns with our broader sustainability goals and reflects our belief that businesses can thrive while minimizing their ecological footprint. Also, a part of that, we have a big commitment to transform to renewable energy sources. We are in the way now to transition a significant portion of our energy consumption to renewable sources, which further reducing our reliance on fossil fuels. In conclusion, I'm incredibly proud of the progress our company has made in optimizing our operations to reduce our carbon footprint footprint through reduced energy consumption, flexible work policies, and a commitment to renewable energy. We are making tangible contributions to global efforts in carbon mitigation. At the end, I would like to say thanks to all participants and wish good luck. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Dovlatov. And now I would like to invite Mr. Ivan Mazharov, co-founder and managing partner Offset 8 Capital, to share with us his reflections. Mr. Mazharov, please.
Thank you. I'd like to start with an internal joke. One of the biggest obstacles to scaling of voluntary carbon markets is use of many acronyms. So either by now we all been confused or we learned so much. So with that in mind, we believe that consumer demand, ESG targets, and the government compliance markets, they make climate change a new liability in the corporate balance sheets. The way to address this balance sheet liability, corporates actually have, in simple terms, two options. Either reduce their own emissions, optimize their own emissions by internal actions, or by engaging with voluntary carbon markets and purchasing carbon offsets to reduce their hard-to-abate emissions. Observing the need to channel institutional capital to climate markets, carbon markets, Abu Dhabi Global Market, that is institutional financial center of Abu Dhabi, they passed a regulation that says that carbon credits is a type of financial instrument that allows to put this on the balance sheets, allows to structure derivatives transactions around this in Abu Dhabi Global Market. Founded in Abu Dhabi, Offset 8 announced at COP28 the Middle East first carbon credit fund to finance nature-based solutions in Africa and Southeast Asia. We seek to provide financing to project developers in the way of long-term prepayments and commitments for delivery of high-quality verified carbon credits. We believe that carbon markets offer a great instrument to achieve Scope 3 emission reductions and to offset hard-to-abate emissions. Not only that, carbon markets, they offer also a way to channel institutional capital in a well-structured manner to protect natural capital and to support local communities who are most impacted by dire changes in climate change. According to the World Bank, 24% of global emissions are already covered by various forms of carbon compliance schemes. 36 countries already put their compliance markets. 22 countries are either considering putting compliance market or compliance taxes. Capitalizing on the success of COP28, UAE has recently passed a regulation mandating companies to measure, track, and report their emissions, and setting up a carbon registry that will be an important backbone to what we believe could be a future compliance market. Our clients from the Middle East and Japan reach out to us asking about the exposure and seeking either investment return from carbon markets or seeking either to procure high-quality carbon credits. If you look on the carbon offsets market, you can simply put it in 2x2 metrics. There are reduction, removal carbon credits, and there are engineering and nature-based carbon credits. Example of engineering carbon credits, such as reduction, it could be renewables. Example of removal carbon credits from engineering solutions, it could be direct air capture. If we look on the nature-based solutions, example of reduction carbon credits could be preservation and protection of forests. Example of renewable carbon credits, removal carbon credits from nature-based solutions, it could be reforestation or use of biochar or agricultural waste management practices. This year, we see a lot of demand from our clients for mostly carbon removal credits that are coming from engineering projects or coming from the projects like nature-based solutions that integrate strong community benefits. I'd like to give an example of one of the projects that we recently announced. We financed early this year one of the largest reforestation and cookstove project in Malawi. So we seeking to restore 6,000 hectares of degraded land. And we provide financing for local communities to buy seed, maize, fertilizers to address their food security needs. We provide local community members with 150,000 of clean cook stoves that allow them to cut less trees in the same area and optimize their time for cooking. And at the same time, we reforest the trees in this area. So this project addresses a full cycle. It addresses food security, it reduces deforestation in the area, and it restores the area that used to be a forest long before. One of the particular features of these projects is that the government of Malawi, recognizing the premium pricing for high quality credits in the international market, issued this project what it called letter of authorization for this project to be eligible to be traded under Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. And we see more and more of our clients reaching out to us and asking for projects that has corresponding adjustment attached to those projects. And those corresponding adjustment could allow them to be traded under Article 6, or most importantly, to be used in the compliance schemes of the country governments. So just like Lily was bringing the example of Singapore, one of the requirements to supply carbon credits to Singapore market is to have corresponding adjustment. Without corresponding adjustment, such credit would not qualify to be tax eligible carbon credit. I was very inspired with the remarks that Mr. Sultanov made in the beginning of the carbon markets and your aspirations for Article 6 progress. We remain very hopeful that COP29 negotiators could achieve meaningful progress in advancing Article 6 discussions, as we believe this would enable to channel more institutional capital to such projects that we are financing in Malawi. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mr. Majarov, for your reflections, which shared your personal experience, but then also weaved in very nicely into other speakers' contributions. So, as often happens with high-level roundtables of this nature, which have limited time, we have overrun, but I am delighted that we've had 11 very high-quality contributions so far, and at this juncture, we are well ahead in the roundtable, and we are ready for the moderated discussion and for the questions from the audience. So I would like to open this discussion and invite questions and comments from the audience. All right. I'm sorry, I cannot see your name from here. But if you could please introduce yourself and then ask your question or make your comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sometimes I don't see my name as well, so it's okay. It's Afghan Isaev. I'm from Sokar, and very grateful for the invitation. So during the New York Climate Action Week, for the avoidance of doubt, Baku Climate Action Week is much, much better. So basically, during the New York Climate Action Week, one of my colleagues from International Oil Company raised a very good issue. So due to the endless debates related to double carbon accounting, due to endless debates related to all the issues, scandals around the voluntary markets, some cases, compliance markets, yeah. He was saying that why don't we just start using the blockchain to at least minimize it. The question to Mr. Wahlberg, the question to Mr. Rushdie, and anybody else here, have you ever, when it comes to ICE, and maybe in your case, seen or have you ever used it, or do you think of applying blockchain technologies to minimize the double carbon accounting issues?
Yeah, I'm happy to respond to that. So thank you. It's an excellent question. I would point out in the first instance that we are an exchange operator and also CCP operator, so clearinghouse. We operate the clearinghouses. We make deliveries to the clearinghouses via registries, so we don't operate registries ourselves. Although that being said, we have got a project to build registry capability if we think there's a market demand for that. But coming back to blockchain, because of the network that we have at ICE, which is a global futures exchange with huge capability, we feel that with blockchain we would only be replicating the capability that we already have. So we don't see the problem that would be fixed by the blockchain in our instance.
Ahmed?
I agree with
Microphone, please.
Okay, I do agree with George that the blockchain is not the only solution. It will duplicate our work because actually the nature of the carbon registry needs to be as defined by the ISO, by the way. Okay, it needs to be a public information depository whereby all the data should be publicly available. But what we can for the verification and for making sure that the project is currently retired or still will be issued some credits. But what actually is being done currently is have like a consolidated global database for all registries. This will allow for no double counting. And by the way, the World Bank is working on such a database, okay? The data house for the voluntary carbon market, whereby some projects, okay, from different registries are being there, okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Afghan Isaev from Sakhar for your very interesting question, and thank you, our speakers, for the answers. Yeah, let's move to the second question, Mr. Husseinov. Yeah. I'm sorry, I can't see what organization you are from, so can you please introduce yourself?
Hussein, the Minister of Economy, and I would like to greet everyone as well on behalf of Minister of Economy, and thank you for the really resource-rich presentation by speaker. Actually, I have a question about establishment of MRV system and its role on determining new NDC and on preparation of LTC reports. With Minister of Environment, Energy, and other line ministries, currently we are working on preparation of this reports, and then the new generation of NDCs, just looking for that. And of course, parallel to this, government is working on a new law, draft law, which aims to establish a robust monitoring control mechanism for greenhouse gas emissions. I'd like just to ask such kind of question, how it will be effective to establish a new law on carbon emissions and new NDC, new generation of NDCs without establishment of MRV system through the data currency, through the accountability and policy implications. Thank you.
A regulatory question. Who would like to take this question?
I can add in a comment here. I do think it is a key question, definitely, and it's something that B0 as a company is advocating for, because currently there's very little standardization across NDCs and reporting, and it creates a huge problem for us, say, as a ratings agency or for other agencies to actually understand how companies are monitoring and reporting on their NDCs. It's been something that I know the UN has been trying to address by introducing new sort of templates and frameworks to help actually do it, but we won't really see the results of that until the end of February 2025 when the newest NDCs are uploaded. But maybe Ahmed, from an Egyptian perspective, has sort of some reflections on it personally.
Thank you, Nili. Okay. For the MRV, we believe that having a robust system for MRV is essential for not only voluntary carbon market, but also the compliance one. But when it comes to the voluntary carbon markets exactly, we need to make sure that all stakeholders are engaged in the validation and verification process, okay? Just to make sure the auditing process is done according to the international best practices, okay? We have the proper accreditation, the national accreditation or the international accreditation bodies working in this field, okay? Getting the required ISOs, making sure that all this process is done through regulated bodies, okay? It could be the environmental regulator, and this is why actually we found that having stakeholders engaged at the first stage, whereby setting the environmental regulator with capital market regulator, with private sector, okay, is a key success for the voluntary carbon market, and a key success for building such MRV system too, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Hussein from the Ministry of Economy for your remarks, and which raised questions. And thank you, Lilian Ahmed, for your participation in this sort of little round of discussion. So we've had now 2 rounds, and I would like to move this roundtable to the 3rd round of discussion. So who would like to start it? Yes. So introduce yourself.
My name is Henning Sasse, and I'm the CEO of Norm Cement. We are a cement producer in Azerbaijan, and I'm also representing the Azerbaijani Cement Producers Association. We are emitting here in Azerbaijan as the industry between 7 and 8% of the total man-made CO2 emissions in the country. Allow me to make a small advertisement. We together in the association have developed a net zero accelerator. We are currently finalizing this one. We will prepare a report, and if anyone is interested, I already have a short version ready of this roadmap, how we can decarbonize until 2050 our industry here in the country. But coming back a little more to the subject, I want to tell you a little about our practical experience in our company. We have certain projects, and in particular one project ready in our company, which is related to waste heat recovery. We tried over the last 2 years to get with this project into the voluntary carbon market. However, we had to realize that, let's say, the money is in the removal, but not in the reduction. And our project would be related to reduction. And due to the low prices, let's say, in the reduction market, we were not able so far to realize this project. In this context, without being an expert, I think maybe it would be good if Azerbaijan would become active in this Article 6 related projects. As I understand, there is a basic agreement with the Japanese government. We heard about this. Even Japanese companies already contacted us. However, so far, as I understand, this was not fully implemented. That's why a practical implementation is not possible. And maybe last comment from our side, we thought about this also in our association and as part of our project. When it comes to greenhouse gas management in the country, if carbon pricing would be limited to the country only, due to the size of the country, the limited amount of emission sources, probably we would prefer a carbon tax. Because as a country, probably greenhouse emission trading would not work. But what for us is for sure also important then, just to mention 1 or 2 aspects is, first of all, it would be good if at least part of this carbon tax would flow back to us, into our industry, so that we could invest in emissions reduction technology. And another thing which is important, and already CBAM was mentioned, CBAM does not protect exporting companies in the European Union, but in our industry we export part of our products, about 15–20%. And there, of course, it would not be good that our products in foreign markets become more expensive because we have a carbon tax in Azerbaijan. So I just wanted to mention these aspects from an industry point of view. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mr. Henning Sasse, for this view from the industry. This was a comment. So I suggest that we close this round and move on to the fourth round. So who would like to open it with a question or with a remark? Sorry, yes, yeah, I can see Mr. Alan Haywood. Oh, Alan, hello, yes. So, yeah, I would like to pass the floor to Mr. Alan Haywood from BP.
Thank you, Vladimir. And I would just like to build on that comment which the gentleman just made about, I think, accessing global markets, because I think the ability to access global opportunity will be more efficient. But I think it leads me to a question about recognizing that there may be different markets. I tend to assume we want a global market. I tend to assume we want a single regulatory standard which will assure us of quality, because ultimately we're dealing with a global problem and quality and reassurance is very important. But I'm struck by Lily's comment that there are different markets and you can make a different risk assessment of those different markets. So now I come to my question to George. Will you be able to accommodate these different markets, or will you have to trade each of them separately on your exchange? And I ask because you already accommodate differences in things like crude oil. There's not one crude oil. The WTI contract accommodates a number of crude oils. So you already have the ability to merge certain things together. Will you be able to do that in the carbon markets?
Well, that's a great question. It's something that we would love to do, of course. But what we see happening globally is that a lot of countries are building domestic carbon markets, and that's a bit of a problem because then you don't have economies of scale. The whole purpose of the market, as you point out, is to have these market efficiencies. So we look at the proliferation, for example, of carbon markets in Asia. There's a lot happening in Asia. We're all aware of that. There's a lot of big schemes out there. They need to be tightened in order for them to work. But then you've got the practical element of are you going to allow liquidity providers into this market? Are you going to allow foreign actors into this market? And one of the successes at ICE, why we have this liquidity, because of course we have companies like yourselves who trade, but because it's a diversified market. It's we've got a lot of different actors taking opposite sides on the derivatives market, and that gives you that great liquidity, gives you the churn rate. So I fear that we are reaching in some countries that point now where a lot of the markets are going domestic and insular, and ultimately we are not going to, of course, have one global carbon market. We're going to have a multitude of carbon markets. And then the question is, what is going to be the spread between them? Could the CBAM, in theory, be an implied spread? I think that's quite an interesting idea. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan and George, for this exchange. And yeah, I would like to share some very good news with the audience. Like in football matches, the COP29 team has kindly allowed us 10 more minutes. So I would like now to move to the round 5. Yes. So who would like to start it? Mr. Isaev, please. Thank you.
Is it allowed the second time to start?
Yes, of course.
Things up?
Yes,
Okay.
of course. No problem.
We were. It was basically discussed earlier when it comes to Article 6. So for Article 6, let's say bilaterally between two parties to work, the corresponding adjustment is required. So we've been discussing with my colleagues here how the government will be making decision when it comes to whether to provide the corresponding adjustment which will go against the NDC for a certain period of time, or not to provide that corresponding adjustment. So of course, if there is no corresponding adjustment, it will not take place when it comes to the transaction. So does anyone know how these things, the decisions are made when it comes to the government, whether to provide the corresponding adjustment and go against the NDC or not? Especially now, new set of NDCs will be loaded in February of next year. Does anyone know? Because we will be applying, so we want to understand how the decision-making process when it comes to the regulator will work.
I'm happy to come in here. I think the process for applying a corresponding adjustment changes per country and per how they want to actually do their NDC. So there's no standardized way of doing it, but this is one of the key things being discussed during negotiations of how you can actually standardize the corresponding adjustment application and the authorization process and when it should happen and sort of the sequencing for that. So it's a very good question, but it's something that's still being discussed and understood. I think so far we've seen under 6.2 a variety of different approaches applied, but because there's still only been very limited actual trades of correspondingly adjusted credits, you can't really see the impact of that or the patterns that are occurring so far.
May I suggest also an answer for that, Afghan? So I'll appeal to a case study of Brazil. If you look on Brazilian market, most of the rhetoric so far that have been made publicly is that the government would not provide corresponding adjustment for REDD+ projects that are avoidance of deforestation. And the reason for that is very simple, is because the government is mindful of the fact that Brazil has a lot of nature-based potential to use those REDD+ projects for their own needs. And obviously the decision to figure out whether to give corresponding adjustment, it should be dependent on your marginal cost of abatement. So some countries, they prefer to keep the low-cost options for themselves and then give corresponding adjustment only to the projects that are high-cost options, like CCUS, for example. And some countries like Brazil, they apparently, this is what has been discussed most of the time, and the base case for now, what we see as potential investor in the country, is that if we go for REDD+ project, we will unlikely receive any corresponding adjustment there. However, the project has a carbon removal component. Like we look at projects in Mozambique, Mozambique government was clear and transparent to us, is that there is a high removal, then corresponding adjustment is more likely, because corresponding adjustment, it allows you to get a premium on the international market. And the government should take a look at this premium versus its own cost of meeting its NDC. So for us, we don't want to go also to invest in the countries where the government gives corresponding adjustment to every project. Because if government gives corresponding adjustment to every single project, we would naturally leave ourselves with the question how they would meet their own NDC and what's the value of those corresponding adjustments. I hope this may answer.
I would like to just
Thank you.
quickly come in one last time as well. So as a ratings agency, we've currently rated over 450 voluntary carbon market projects. We're also in the process of rating our first Article 6 projects. And a key consideration for that is actually how is the country performing on their NDC? Is it a robust and reasonable NDC? And how close are they actually to achieving the targets of their NDC? So it's a key thing to actually consider on how high quality is an Article 6 credit based on that performance, that linkage to the NDC and what they're actually trying to achieve. But it's still a very sticky question because we just haven't seen sort of that impact of it so far. We don't know how many countries are actually going to sell a lot of their correspondingly adjusted credits and then potentially not be able to meet their targets. So it's a key consideration going forwards.
So let's say that in the case that you see that NDC is extremely aggressive and the country is providing a lot of corresponding adjustments, what do you do then as a rating agency?
I can't say conclusively what we would do, but I would assume that it would be rated more poorly because it is not therefore actively linking with NDC.
Thank you. That concerns us a lot, so that you understand, you know, like corresponding adjustment, you know, and NDC.
Yes, this is obviously very understandable because yeah, this is a very sort of ground-to-earth question because this is what affects operators like SOCAR, and this led to a very, very interesting exchange. I would like to thank now the British Ambassador, His Excellency Fergus Auld, who unfortunately has to leave because he has another engagement. But yes, thank you very much, Fergus, for being with us today and for making for making this event together with COP29 team happen. Thank you. We still have a little bit of time, and yeah, I would like to move on to round 6. So, yeah, I can see Mr. Vugar Namazov, correctly?
Yeah, it's me. Thank you for the interesting topic. My name is Vugar Namazov. I'm CEO of Unicapital Investment Firm. It's a capital market perspective, so I would like to touch topics from the capital markets side. And the role of the capital markets and financial markets evolves while we are moving towards carbon mitigation mechanisms and mitigation strategies. And I would like to raise a topic for green financing, though it's not directly linked to the market mechanisms, but it's highly related to mitigation efforts. And today we heard the chairman of central bank announced the regulation for green bond issuance in Azerbaijan. So I would like to touch this part of this very important topic and how can financial markets, capital markets be aligned in order to help to boost those mechanisms and help for the mitigation and from the perspective of green financing tools and mechanisms. And this is an open question for who can handle it. I mean, who can take it?
I'm sorry, did they announce today?
Yes.
So it's public now?
No, he announced that till the end of this year there will be regulation for green bond issuance.
Because we've been waiting for it for some time. I thought they released it today. So
it was announced on the last roundtable.
And
Yes.
from the other
Just now.
perspective, we already have a precedent. Like it's not a green, but it could be considered as green according to international standards, and we already have companies who do provide second party, who facilitate to having second party opinion via the well-known service providers. So we have a setup already in place. I believe after having the regulations in place, we will be able to involve the national agency who will do the second party opinion in line with national taxonomy. And I believe till the end we will have an official green bond issues in Azerbaijan, but till now we have some issuances, but they are not considered as official green, but they do have second party opinion.
Okay, so will it follow the International Capital Market Association, the green bond principles?
You mean taxonomy, right?
Yeah, for the use of the proceeds.
In Azerbaijan, it's in the pipeline, and we are just waiting for the regulations to be in place, and hopefully the taxonomy will come first rather than the regulation itself.
Okay.
And we hope that the taxonomy will be before the COP, and then we will have regulation itself.
Okay, from a regulator and capital market regulator point of view, I invite you not only to introduce the green bonds, okay, because you have social bonds in addition to women empowerment bonds, we have climate bonds, we have blue bonds, all the what we call GSS plus thematic bonds. It's not only green, it's green, social, sustainability, and other sustainability themes. Thank you. Yeah, this is what actually we introduced in Egypt before the COP.
Okay.
Yeah, back in.
I believe we have a setup already, so it will be easy. Once we have a national regulation, it will be easy to just jump to the market and issue those bonds. I mean, everything is set up, is ready already. So, and we have an expertise on that. And from my perspective, from my experience, I do know that we gathered huge experience of issuing green bonds, how to handle it, how to get second party opinion, how to prepare, how to deal with investors, how to prepare the issuer. And I think we have a benchmark, and we have like capability of doing it very fast once we will have the regulation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Namazov, for this question and comments, and thank you very much.